Hi everyone, Lomi here. So I've shared a lot of patterns lately and one question keeps coming up. What do I do if I want to use this pattern for a different size of doll? If you have access to a printer, it's pretty easy to get a rough fit. All you need to know is the doll's height. How well this works varies from doll to doll and size to size, so you'll want to practice with scrap fabric and make adjustments to the pattern before cutting your good material. Most requests I've gotten fall into 4 size categories. 60 centimeters, which is pretty much standard SD size, 45 centimeter Slim Mini, 26 centimeter USD, and 16 centimeter, which fits Pookifi and Latte Yellow. USD and smaller sizes sometimes need to be made a little wider for a good fit, but the only thing you have to do is print the pattern at a smaller percentage size. For example, since 45 is 75% of 60, to fit a 45 centimeter Mini, you'd print a pattern for a 60 centimeter SD at 75%. Scaling a 60 centimeter pattern to 44% is a rough fit for USD, and 27% is a rough fit for 16 centimeter dolls like Pookifi and Latte Yellow. To use a pattern designed for a Mini for other dolls, you'd print at 125% for SD, 58% for USD, and 35% for Pookifi. To use a pattern designed for USD for other dolls, you'd print at 231% for SD, 173% for Mini, and 62% for Pookifi. Printing in different scales is easy in most browsers by selecting Print Preview and then scaling the page to a custom percentage. This can be applied to any size of doll if you know the height. Another option is resizing a printed pattern by hand. It's a lot more challenging, but it can give nice results. Here I have a shirt pattern I made for my old Zowl Love before I sold the doll. It's a bit smaller than SD, so I'm going to use measurements from a Volks SD13 to enlarge the pattern. If you know how to draft patterns, you'll probably want to look away, because everything I know is self-taught and I'm sure it's not technically correct, even though it works well, especially if you don't have a lot of experience working with patterns. So on this piece of newsprint, I've already traced a copy of a pattern piece and drawn a line down the middle. Since this pattern is the same shape on both sides of the piece, I only need to modify one half and then fold it. I'll begin by marking the seam allowance on the shoulder seam, since that will let me line up pieces for resizing the sleeve later. Then I'll increase the length of the piece. If you're going off measurements listed on a doll company's site, you probably won't know how long to make the shirt. For the length on this, I'm using the arm length measurement, since the bottom hem of my t-shirts usually falls around my wrist. I marked the seam allowance on the side of the original pattern, so I can get a better idea of what the dimensions of the original garment were. The SD13 bust and shoulder measurements are both about 4 centimeters larger than the Zowl this was originally designed for, so adding 1 centimeter to the side of the pattern will be enough to enlarge it to fit. Since the SD13's arms are larger, I'll need to drop the armhole about the same amount. The neck is only a little larger, so making that half a centimeter larger is plenty. I'll double check my measurements before moving on, but I sketched the 1/4 inch seam allowances in for easy reference. Like I said before, I'll need that to enlarge the sleeve later. Once this pattern piece is done, it gives me some standards I can refer to when enlarging the other pieces. So instead of redrawing from one measurement to another, I can just take the knowledge of how much I increased the width and armhole depth, and how much length I added, and then apply that to the piece for the back. A couple centimeters to the bottom, a centimeter to the side, and a centimeter or so to the bottom of the armhole. I checked the length of both sides to be sure I did it right. I'm a little off on my measurement of the arm, so I fixed that. I personally like shirts that can be pulled on over a doll's head, or even those that require a head to be removed. But if you prefer a back opening, you'd add a 1/2 inch to the line denoting the middle of the back. This gives you a 1/4 inch seam allowance and a 1/4 inch overlap for adding fasteners. Now it's time to see how much I need to enlarge the sleeve. I cut out the back piece and mark 1/4 inch seam allowances on the shoulder and armhole. You can tell I do this a lot because I can eyeball a 1/4 inch really well apparently. I lay the pattern pieces with the shoulders overlapping to the seam allowance, simulating the size the pieces will be when sewn together. I weight it down with my ruler, then measure along the seam allowance drawn in the armhole. This measurement is how long the top curve of the sleeve needs to be. This gives me a measurement of 16 centimeters, where the original sleeve was 11 centimeters, so I need to add 2.5 centimeters to either side. Again, since this pattern piece is a mirror image, I'll only modify one side, then fold it in half. Then I extend the top curve. I'll make the sleeve a little longer too. No particular measurement here, just eyeballing what I think will look good. Then I close the side. You don't have to taper your sleeve if you don't want. It's perfectly okay to draw it square. I like it tapered, so I lay my ruler parallel to the original line and draw a new one to match. For this enlargement, that's all I have to do. The next step is testing the pattern and finding someone with a standard SD to try it on. But what if you want to make a pattern smaller? The same principle applies. I'll shrink this side to minifee size just because I maybe have Fairyland site bookmarked on my phone and can get the measurements easily. I don't think I'll need the waist or hip measurements, but I'll write them down anyway. The shoulder width I divide in half, and the circumference of bust, waist, and hip I'll divide into quarters to get the sizes I need for this. The whole process is pretty much exactly the same as what I just showed you for enlarging a pattern, except drawing on the inside because my new measurements are smaller. To help preserve the shape of the original pattern, when reducing the length, I find the overall difference, which is about 5 centimeters, and then split it between top and bottom, shaving 2.5 centimeters off either end. Referring back to what I said before about shrinking using percentages, I know I need to make the armholes and neckline roughly 75% of the original size. Zells are a bit smaller than SDs, but minifees are a bit smaller than the typical slim mini, so the conversion stays about the same. And that gives me a rough resize for a smaller doll. I don't know anyone nearby who owns a minifee, but I do have a masking tape dress form I made from a friend's slim mini, so I can compare my pattern to that. Holding the pattern pieces to the dress form shows me it's just a shade too small for her slim mini, which should be just about right for a minifee. So for this pattern too, it's time to draft a test garment and try it on for size. And that's all for today. Thank you for watching. Bye.